There we go.
Good. So welcome everyone, and welcome James Davis to our second episode of season 2, the Refuge of Witnessing. Yeah, we had, I'm going to let in a couple more people here. Yeah, we had a really nice launch last week and just turned into a kind of amazing conversation. So James, just give us the, back of the baseball card bio.
Okay,
Obviously, we
cool.
know falling in Scrabble, falling off the bouldering. Maybe there's an up
Yeah,
elevator in there somewhere. Or...
yeah, all that. My name is James Davis. I was born on a U.S. Army base in Nuremberg, Germany in 1985. Um, I am currently a PhD student at the University of North Texas. I am pursuing a PhD in creative writing with an emphasis in poetry. Um, I studied at the University of Houston. I got a degree in French from there. That's where I got my bachelor's. And I got my MFA in creative writing from the University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And currently, I'm working on my PhD. I am an associate poetry editor for Narrative Magazine. Um, and I am a nationally ranked Scrabble player. I was ranked, my highest ranking, I think, was in the 40s. I was once like the 48th best player in North America, something like that.
That's great. That's great. So just before we start, one housekeeping thing I just posted. Holly is going to talk read for us next week, so she already knows this. So if you do want to receive emails about our poetry events weekly and be on our list, just put your name and email address in the chat box and I will grab it. We don't use it for anything else. We'll just use it to email you unless James has some Scrabble news, Scrabble championships. So James, the refuge of witnessing, last week we started talking about, where do you find a refuge? And I think as that thinking expands, how does that show up in your poetry? Or maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, it's not something that I've thought about actively until we started talking about this, but I think a lot of my poetry has to deal with childhood and my experiences from childhood, which were, fraught in various ways. And I think bearing witness to those events is a way of creating a space around them that I can make sense of them and making them more manageable. So, I grew up in Colorado Springs, which is a kind of hotbed of evangelical Christianity. And I went to New Life Church from about 7 to age 12. My father started going there after he and my mother divorced. Hi, Puddin. And it was a very, very strange experience as a young child to be immersed in the sort of Pentecostal evangelical community when I hadn't had any experience of that up to that point in my life. So a lot of my poetry deals with that, and the poems themselves become a sort of refuge. They're a way of creating a refuge in that memory that maybe I didn't have at the time. And they're, I talk about wanting to find a refuge in the moment as a child and not really having it. So the poems themselves It's become a sort of space that I didn't have then.
That's great. So when did you, start writing poetry?
Oh, I started relatively late in life, actually. Like I would do it in middle school and high school if it was assigned, and I would have fun with it. Like I definitely um enjoyed poetry whenever it was on the kind of syllabus or whatever. But it wasn't until college that I started taking poetry classes and seeing poetry as like a viable sort of life choice. Um, and originally, when I was pursuing creative writing, I wanted to write fiction. So I was very interested in storytelling. Um, and but when I got into poetry, it was a much better outlet for my pure love of words.
Yeah.
I tend to love words as themselves, words for words sake. And poetry is such a wonderful outlet for that love. Um, so my poems, as they've evolved and I've gotten more serious with it, are a mixture of those two impulses: the impulse to tell stories and the impulse to just like play with words and see what sort of magic you can get by combining them in interesting, weird ways.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because, I've written just a couple of poems on finance is my job, or what I do, not poetry. So, I just find it interesting what you said that the poetry was a refuge either to capture or maybe clarify some of your childhood memories. I just thought that was pretty. That was just like I'd never heard that before. Someone say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all creative writing is a form of time travel. Like it's a way of accessing the past and like inhabiting something that, you know, you can't in reality re-access, but writing lets you sort of cheat time a little bit. And so going back in time, whether it's through a poem or a story in prose or whatever, is a way of like creating uh, spaces or amenities that you may have needed at the time and
Yeah.
didn't have access to. And those memories are very much still alive in your brain as you grow up. They're very much still real. So treating them as if they're you know malleable, which they are, is a way of coping and just making your presence a little more manageable.
Yeah, I think when I tell some stories, they sound a lot better in 2021 than they did in 1961. That's for
Yeah,
sure. There's a little more color, a little more clarity. So
yeah, maybe a little less objective truth, but maybe more sort of emotional truth.
yeah, yeah. So is there, and once again, I think for the people on the show today, I think we're doing this time. Last year we basically teed it off and then said, James, hey, read for half an hour and there'll be a couple of cues. This is much more organic, and I just think going where the conversation goes.
Mhm.
So is there a poem that you talked about that would capture one of those childhood memories that you could share with us?
Absolutely. Yeah. The very first poem in my book, Club Q,
Yeah.
um, is about New Life Church and really about different ways of seeking refuge. And I won't give it too much more exegesis before I jump in. But it's called Shout to the Lord, which was the name of a sort of hymn or song that was sung during the praise and worship sessions at church. So this is Shout to the Lord. What I know at 8 of God, hymns on giant television screens, my father's tongues and Sunday jeans, his sneakers on his hands. God, shrink me 10 sizes, wrap me in a bubble and let me float through the rafters, the spotlights, the flags of the distant cultures we pray for here inside our holy bubble. It's easy here to believe in Jesus. In the aisle, a man face down on the carpet, sobbing, his back heaving. The Holy Spirit, my father says, is pretty cool. Jesus, do I have to stand for 2 more hours? Would it kill you if I sat down? I asked my father if I may use the restroom, where I'll try to spend the next 2 hours reading my picture Bible in a stall. The first day, the second, the third, the fourth, the fall, the flood, inside the 8 square cubit stall. I'm afraid of hell. I count the tiles. A speaker pipes in the choir, a song I know by heart. The voices ring off 50,000 turquoise tiles.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean the bubble in there really made me think of like the refuge I wanted at the time. The ability to just sort of be by myself. In that very it was just such a big congregation, you know. It was maybe 2,000 or 4,000 seats, and you know
Wow.
it was packed every week.
Wow. So your MO was to head to the bathroom quick when the song started.
Yeah, I think it was like I would 2 songs or so into the service, I'd be like, I have to use the bathroom, and then I just wouldn't come back until someone came to look for me, you know.
Yeah. What happened when your dad caught on that you were jamming out of the service?
Oh, I don't remember exactly. Like I think that that method just kind of stopped working for a while. Then maybe I tried to go to there was like a children's church that met upstairs, and
Yeah.
that, you know, that was had its own sort of problems. Um and you know, eventually I just sort of found a way to sit there and kind of occupy my mind some other way.
So I don't know. The evangelicals do a lot of witnessing, of people being enraptured by the Holy Spirit and stuff like that. So is that a big part of the
Yeah.
whole?
Yeah, absolutely. Like that was a part of the service. Is there would be people that sort of came forward and testified about like visions that they had, or different ways that the Holy Spirit spoke to them. And um yeah, I mean, it was, I think that kind of tradition is very much alive in this poem, and probably in my work generally. The idea of like witnessing what some sort of revelation that has been given to you as if from a divine source.
Hmm. Witnessing revelation from a divine source. Yeah, now we can just go online and get the same. Only kidding. I don't know. There's too many undivine or divine sources on the internet. So
Right. Yeah. No, I think that the church had a very strong impact on just my appreciation of language and words, and like hearing our pastor speak every week. You know, he was a very skilled and like charismatic orator. and the rhythms of his speech, um, regardless of the content of what he was saying, it was a very powerful and musical experience, and like it was very social too. There was a lot of call and response. Um, it'd be like, God is good, and then the congregation is supposed to repeat that back. God is a good God. God is a good God. The devil is a bad devil. The devil is a bad devil. And there's sort of poetic rhythm or cadence to uh, the ritual of the services.
Hmm. Hmm. So are there poems that maybe address, some other witnessing that you've done? I'm just
Yeah,
trying to figure out how does that show up for you?
Yeah, so um, the longest poem in my book, uh, which I want to read for you all, is about my experience working for Chipotle's customer service department. Um, so for about 8 years, I was uh, it was called a marketing strategist, but that was very euphemistic. Like what I did was basically responded to the emails that came into Chipotle's website about the sort of negative experiences people had at Chipotle restaurants across the United States. Um, and so that itself was a form of witnessing, right? Like the the people witnessing to the poor experience they had at a restaurant, like, and just testifying to the sort of unholiness of that. Like they have this sort of sacred restaurant experience in mind, and when there's a deviation from that, it strikes people as very like unjust. And so I would respond to at least 60 of those emails a day. um and so it was just a sort of complete like baptism almost in complaint, and like the response to that was naturally supposed to be empathy, so you empathize with their experience, you promise some sort of fix for it, like, we'll do better next time, and then you offer them some sort of gift along with it. Like I sent out a bunch of coupons every day. And so this poem is just a way of testifying to the day-to-dayness of this very strange form of communication that is interrupted in a lot of different ways. Like you never see these people's faces, you never really hear their voices, but um, there's a bunch of just raw emotion about very silly, trifling things. Um,
Well,
so
did they have to
yeah,
give you their name and address? Was there, how you complete some forms, you have to fill in all the required fields, or
yep.
did you just get like some email, it was just a rant and you never knew who it was from?
You did have to fill in your email address at least. And most of the people were very like forthcoming about that. Like they would give their real name and their
Yeah.
real email, and they had a real concern. They had a real experience. But every so often, the real cranks would give a fake email, like fu@fu.com, and just rant for paragraphs and paragraphs about what they didn't like. Um, so yeah, it was mostly like you got the sense that you were talking to real people or communicating with real people.
Yeah. Good. Good. So let's hear you're
Okay,
making me
cool.
hungry. I don't know if I want to visit Chipotle again or never again.
We'll see how you feel after
Yeah.
the end of this piece. Okay. So it's called Sincerely Chipotle. I could talk about sincerity, how men for centuries have dreamt it meant without wax, inventing honeymongers barking sine cera in the forum, shifty sculptors patching flaws in marble, just so stories, sticky as the truth. Or I could talk about the word chipotle, Nahuatl name for smoked dried jalapeno. It's T and L so tempting to transpose that some believe Nick Nolte is its rhyme. Maybe your dad pronounces it this way despite your wincing, or because of it. I shouldn't talk about your dad or me, millennial gringo in a cubicle, partial to Zelda, yoga, and pipe dreams, buoyed by Zoloft and a master's degree IKEA framed in a Denver bachelor pad, though I could talk about that for some length. Let's talk about your last experience at one of our 2000 plus locations. I'm sorry, truly sorry. For the food, not quite as good as you remembered it, the rice too firm, the beans congealed, the steak $9 and dry as Jack Link's jerky. I'm sorry for our haste to make your tacos, the look we gave you when you said, slow down. I mean to say, we're sorry, and we mean it. No matter the 10,000 times we've said it, no matter the degree of the offense, we find our sorrow. Nous sommes désolés. Let's talk in French. Let's souffler, sous vide. Let's julienne an onion. Let's mise en place. Our CEO's a chef, you may have heard. Great guy, nice jeans. We'll chat you up at parties. Was great on Oprah all those years ago before, I guess you'd call it, le déluge. Let's not talk about E. coli. Sure, you've heard of it, just as you must have heard of Scientology or crystal meth, a far-flung threat become a household name. It seems alarmist. Then your neighborhood Chipotle is a vector of disease. People talk. The internet, like water, transmits the smell of blood in all directions. At first, it's customers who bleed, then us. Once doting magazines ink exposés, shares nosedive, executives resign, the Christmas party's canceled, lines are short and nobody complains. My cube mates yak on Slack, check Facebook, drink seasonal IPAs, and never leave a minute late. I promise we are decent people, but it's nice for once to only say, I'm sorry, sir, 37 times a day at most. Let us forget about the general queue, the ever-mounting heap of misspelled woes typed with furious, shaky thumbs on phones by strangers in restaurants 10 states away. Let the grill be cold, the fryer drained, the guacamole sealed in plastic wrap. Talk is cheap. Creative is a noun. Our guests are always guests, not customers. Don't say healthy. Don't say serious. Don't say, I'm sorry that you had raw chicken. Say, sorry to hear that. That sounds truly awful. It's really not that bad, but there are days when I can only talk about the end. My sudden, bitter walk away from years apologizing to the void, from work done not for love, but for sincerity. The needy ghost of real America eating a steak burrito, just like me. I'd like to talk about that day. For lunch, I'll go to the arcade on Blake and Fifth, the one with beer on tap, and drink my way through 20 quarters worth of burger time. By 5, I'll finally get to level 4, where Peter Pepper meets his pickled end. We'll never talk again. I won't write back. I'll bury you beneath a mound of books I'll finally read. I'll write my hidden words. I'll spend my savings down to triple digits, wake late, sleep late, sink back into the life I lived before I said, let's make this right. I take it back about sincerity. I can't talk about it, not sincerely. Its etymology, the real one, I forget. Something predictable is not a lie. Introverts are good at saying sorry, little else. And even that's a stretch. You want to talk to somebody who cares? Such people are in short supply, I've found. My mother, and most likely yours, are too. Perhaps a teacher from many years ago, the one who writes the grown up you and asks if you still write, or doesn't ask, but wishes. You want to talk to somebody who listen? There might be more of those. Professionals, mostly, myself excluded. Therapists who listen better and are better paid. Public defenders, hotline operators, masseurs, financial planners, prostitutes. You want to talk? Then talk. Well, okay. First, let me just start by saying I love Chipotle. I sometimes go 2 times a day, no joke. The gals at my Chipotle know my order by heart. A bowl, I'm celiac. Brown rice, black beans, no meat, I'm vegetarian. Uh-huh, I'm here. I'm listening. Keep talking. Extra fajitas, a little bit of corn, a lot of sour cream, and guac, of course. I'm like a member of the family. And I'm not someone who complains for fun. I work in customer service too, in fact. And I could talk about entitlement. Folks who think the universe owes them stuff, who think the customer is always right, is meant to be taken literally, as if. I'm not expecting anything for free. I don't want coupons, anything like that. I just think you should talk to your GM. She's new, a transfer, heavyset, Latina. I'm sorry to be blunt. No one wears name tags. That's fine. Go on. What did she do to you? Well, it's not so much a certain thing she did. It's just her energy. No smiles. No thanks for stopping in. I always leave a tip and she says nothing. Once I even asked her what her name was. She said, "Why?" Oh dear, that's terrible. I know, I thought so too. I just don't think she likes her job at all. It's rubbing off on everyone around her. The crew all talk to me like they're afraid she'll dock their pay for every cube of chicken they serve above 4 ounces. It's absurd. Sorry to hear that. I hope you can forgive her brusqueness as protection of the business. Still, it's your experience that counts. I'll call her boss and have him talk to her about how people are our business too. I'm sure a one-on-one will do the trick. I know you said you don't want something free, but I would feel remiss unless I offered a little something to express our thanks. We can talk about the details, but I'd like to give you my virginity. I lost it when I was 18 years old, watching Final Destination 2 with Brian Young, the first out boy I'd met. I told him he felt good. I guess he did. We haven't talked in years. I doubt he'd mind if I took back the tenderness he plucked and sent it to you in a FedEx tube. I'll only need your address and a number the guy can call you at if something breaks. I so appreciate your willingness to talk about such touchy things as sex and politics. You know, we serve burritos, but nothing's ever just burritos, is it? I'll tell you this. Each day I wake at 6, fall back asleep, and wake 9 minutes later. I play this game until I can't afford to. I talk myself out of malingering, which may be all that anyone can ask. I cannot stomach all your grievances, and then I do. I drink 6 cups of coffee. I meet my daily goals. I close your case. Shut up. Please shut up and come back soon.
Boy, 8 years of that, eh?
I think it was like I did 7 years in that position, and then I moved to a different department where I wrote manuals. I wrote training manuals for various um, stuff people had to do in the
Yeah.
restaurants. So that was a better gig. Less there was less work, and I got paid more for it. That's kind of the way things go.
And just a Chipotle question: do any of your cube mates, did you ever rank the stories like best story of the week or?
Oh yeah, I mean, you would do that for the first 2 weeks or so that you were working there. Like you would just be utterly like bewildered by the sheer different individual instances of weird shit that came in. So like, and you would want to like document them all. Like I kept a running sort of Word document of all the craziest emails that came in. And then after about a month of that, it was just like a total numbing wash. And like you couldn't afford mentally to like pick out the particulars anymore. So
Wow.
you had to just sort of treat it as you had to distance your kind of natural human reaction from the function that you were serving.
So James, last week, and Holly was on last week. We talked about uh, poetry is almost a safe space to do some witnessing.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're behind a plate glass window and you're observing the world, but you're really, I'm not going to say it's the bubble from church, but you're really in a safe space, even though the poem may pull you in and make you go in different directions. I'm just wondering, is witnessing kind of one of the essential elements? We're trying to bring people. I know we're always trying to bring people, I think, into an experience. I'm just wondering what you thought about that kind of poetry is a safe space for the readers to uh, observe the world.
Hmm.
That's
That's
all right. You don't have to have an answer. It's just I'm just like trying to, it's. I think these concepts are just uh,
yeah.
interesting.
As a writer, poems are definitely like a safe space for me, you know? Like I feel like creating making sense of something that doesn't make sense um creates a sense of stability and kind of um
Mm.
therapy almost a way of just turning that uncontrollable moment into a sort of artifact, something beautiful. And I try not to overly concern myself with how the reader interprets that, but hopefully, I mean, hopefully something similar happens to them if they've had an experience that's parallel to what I'm describing. That they can climb into the poem and you know use it to sort of heal from whatever experience they had that's analogous.
Mm. Uh, Hold on a second. There was
Yeah, I saw some animal
no,
slink
no, no.
by
Yeah,
earlier.
Kibo's our Shiba Inu. Yeah,
Oh,
she wanders in and out. She's got her
yeah,
own
that's one
way of the
thing.
world. And Linda was I didn't know what that was. She was lugging. She got some wine from UPS, and she was, I guess, lugging it down the stairs. I
Yeah,
had no idea what she was doing. There was this crazy sound behind me. So
sounds like a lot of wine if it's being
yeah, yeah.
lugged.
Yeah, I think there she's into a wine. Our neighbor with our neighbor went to this wine store local in Brunswick. We live in Topsom, Maine, and last time he went there, he bought 40 bottles, and Linda bought 12. And I basically said, "Is what are you going to be, inside until like March 1st or something?" So
Yeah,
I don't know.
March
They buy
1st.
yeah they buy stuff. Yeah, it probably only lasts till December 1st. Who knows? Yeah, our neighbor likes to buy a lot of wine. So, and he's he's single. I'm just saying, say, how many bottles do you have in your house? I think it's, I don't know, too many to count.
Man.
So I wanted to, before you read another poem, I just wanted to open up for a few minutes. If anybody had any questions or comments, Holly, or I don't know. Yeah, Holly, go ahead.
I have a comment. Listening to your Chipotle poem, it was so, it reminded me some of like Spalding Gray's Monster in a Box, of just this torrent of response from all this input.
Yeah,
Especially
that's
since you
right.
started out with the refuge in the bathroom stall. It's like you have to find a small space. So it's taking all this flood of complaint. I think you said like a litany of complaint, or a
Yeah,
like
litany,
that.
torrent. I mean, it's a chorus too, because it's all these different voices. And I think I did the math, and over the time that I was in that job, I responded to something like 70,000 emails. And they're mostly from discrete individual people, So I had communicated with upwards of 60,000 people during that time. And they're all individual, but naturally there's just themes and phrases and refrains that come up. And it's just a really interesting way to like understand what the human voice sounds like.
And you sounded kind of like you were at some points possessed,
Yeah, that's right. Like
or
you
channeling or something. I mean,
yeah,
I
you
was a tax preparer for a long while.
uh-huh.
And it's really easy to just, like you said, laugh at people. And then this moment comes where you become tender toward them because their whole day is hinging on the texture of the
Right.
beans in the burrito. It's like, oh my God, you really are sorry, even though they're putting words in your mouth. Anyway, I thought it was just brilliant.
Oh, thank you so
All the
much.
different things going on at the same time.
Yeah, you mentioned Spalding Gray. I was thinking of Frost when I wrote that poem, just sort of the dailiness of work. And it's written in blank verse, which I find is like um, a really productive way of writing about work. Blank verse and kind of mechanical or dailiness is just a natural fit in my mind.
We don't get enough poetry of it, so I'm glad.
Oh, thank you.
Mhm.
So, you have another poem you'd like to read for us?
Yes. Since I was talking about making sense out of the sort of unsensical, this is another, I think it's a poem of witness, and it's just about responding to cruelty, basically. So this poem is called "To the Observant Motorist Who Called Me Faggot." We have names for things we barely understand. The Doppler effect, for instance. You have no idea how it works, and neither do I, but I'm sure we both can appreciate the way it splits a word in two clean syllables, the fag from it, the it from fag. I like to think of myself as a hyphen. To you, maybe, I'm a piñata, gaily colored, filled with sugar, battered open by blindfolded children. Maybe in your life's game of tag, I am perpetually it. Or maybe, after all, I am nothing, something approached, named, and sublimated. I've thought of several names for you. Chuck seemed appropriate. But without a name, you are your civic, its rattling speakers, its red taillights forever headed south.
Nice. Very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, that was that's one of those poems where it feels like a refuge after having been done, or really the process of writing it becomes a refuge too. Like just even poem drafts that feel unsuccessful, when I'm writing them about a real event that is sort of a thorn in my side, like the writing process is worth it.
So is the first, you just brought up something at least interesting for me. So is the first draft kind of capture the moment? And then when you're revising it, what does the revision do to that original story?
The first draft of that particular poem was a lot longer and like a lot saucier.
Yeah.
Like there is a lot more sort of anger and sort of dunks. Like I was really trying to dunk on the you that's being addressed in the poem, but the revision process was more thinking about what the form of address in this poem is trying to do, like what the sort of letter I'm writing to this poem is meant to accomplish. And it's, obviously the intended recipient isn't going to be reading it. So it's really a poem for me, and a poem about finding peace from the moment, and trying to imagine what this person gets out of that kind of drive by like slur hurling. So yeah, the revision just sort of cooled down the emotion a little bit and rounded it out.
Yeah, great. Any more poems you want to share?
Sure, I was hoping I could share some new poems. Club Q is just a little older than a year old now, which is still very young, and I'm there's still so many poems in here I haven't read. But I do have some new poems that I feel are in the sort of witnessing mode that I would like to share and read aloud. So this is a very new poem, and I've shared it with Kay, who's in the audience already. But it's a poem that witnesses to my childhood. My dad and stepmom were in a sort of famous multi-level marketing scheme called Amway. So this is a poem that just is about what it's like to be a child of parents who are in Amway. So it's called Just Wait Till We're Diamond. And Just Wait Till We're Diamond is the name of a children's book that was written by an Amway member that was meant to be sort of given to children of Amway parents to explain what was going on and why they were always out trying to recruit people to Amway. So this is called Just Wait Till We're Diamond. The book appeared on the coffee table, slipped there by my father and stepmother for me to find one night while they were out doing what they were supposed to do, showing the plan, the pitch they were told to deliver 5 nights a week for Amway, whose Critics' Choice cereal and Glister toothpaste and artistry makeup kits and bottles of caustic shampoo accumulated in sealed boxes in our basement and garage. Amway, which legally was not a pyramid scheme. Amway, which was, of course, short for the American way, the dream of being your own boss, rich enough to spend time with your kids. The storybook title told the truth. I waited for the reliable beeps of the microwave full of Amway brand pizza rolls, waited for their hearts to melt. I waited for the crank of the garage door opener, the sound of the Cadillac coughing to a stop, which always came too late and too soon. I waited till I was bored enough to read the story I already knew. Every night, as her parents tucked in little Reed, they whispered in her elfish ear, just wait till we're diamond. Till then, years of babysitters and missed ballet recitals and faith. On the flyleaf, a scripture. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. The future Reed imagined was a sailboat crayoned on a detergent sea, with a mac and cheese sun sinking in the west, a dream that came to life as the yacht that graced the cover, christened the Dream. Mom, Dad, and Reed gazed off the bow, headed wherever the bowsprit pointed, not a tube of glister to be found. The truth was, I was the Reed of two distributors, part of their dream. My thin arms strong enough to load a box or two of dish soap into the Cadillac's trunk while they still had it. The truth, we sailed together once on my stepmother's brother's boat. She and I grew seasick immediately and recuperated amidships in little berths not much wider than a picture book splayed open. Eyes closed, mouths watering, we dreamt of Dramamine. We dreamt of a land motionless, full of brand name ginger ale and saltine crackers.
Oh man. James, I think I'm getting the James Davis story. We got New Life, Amway, Chipotle. I'm
Yeah, I mean my poems very much like I do think that my poems are often poems of witness, but they're witnessing to a sort of banality, um and what is concealed or glossed over in that banality.
no, they're great. They're great.
Thank you.
Great insight into personal experiences. So we got three. I don't know how many more are left. I feel like I ought to buy the big book. And we're only on chapter 3 of James.
Oh, there's other stories for sure. Yeah, I'm working on my second collection now and just trying to piece together what sort of new themes and new stories I want to explore.
Great. So we probably have time for one more poem if you want to share it. If
Sure.
anybody wants to ask a question, you could just raise your hand or unmute yourself if you want to, after he does the poem.
Okay, cool. So I'll do the poem first. This is another witnessy type poem, and just a little content warning. In the very beginning of this poem, there is a very violent hate speech toward Muslims that is, in the context of a bumper sticker. So the poem is making sense of that sort of speech. So this is called Love Song. The first thought that struck me when I saw the Ford F-150 duly loaded with the fuck Muslims bumper stickers plural, identical, slapped to its back windshield, white sans serif capital letters on a plain black field was, I will put this in a poem, which was, at 20, my response to anything truly ugly, infanticide, starvation, NyQuil. Love, I left well enough alone, afraid it would fight back, like the only time I broke down and wailed on my big brother, surrendering to his taunts, loosing a fugue of fists in the back of the RV with D and P, our big half-sisters, en route to a family reunion in the sticks where Great Aunt B railed against the Catholics, the Blacks, her screeds familiar as party tricks. We united in silence, all but D, who went to mass each Sunday and backed Aunt B into an apology. Months later, the old woman died. If only she could see D and P today, in hijab, fasting till sundown, hosting lavish Eids, and teaching their sons the facts of difference, that I have sex with other sons and sin no worse than other men. The one in the truck, for instance, who 15 years since we shared the road still menaces memories interstate. Was he headed toward family who made him park the truck a block away? What did he buy his granddaughter for her 5th birthday? Does she still remember how it felt inside his arms? The cigarette smoke woven into his jacket, the loving words he managed to say.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you. Yes, it was
Uh,
good to read these in poems out loud. It always helps
yeah,
you
great.
hear them.
Very good. Anybody have any final questions or comments? I mean, Kay said after your Chipotle saga, I'm going to call it a saga, not a poem. It's probably a mini series on Netflix right now. The Chipotle customer service said everything is in that poem. So that was the one comment in the chat. So
It would visually that would be a very boring story. I think it was mostly sitting and typing and doing this.
yeah. Holly, did you have a question or comment?
No, I'm just
Yeah.
really taking it all in. I'm really glad that I got to hear you today.
Oh,
Really strong.
thank you so much.
I was thinking the voices of hate that came up several times, how Frank X. Walker often does persona poems in the voice of horrendous people.
Yeah.
The assassin of Medgar Evers, and how, you know, that toxicity goes in you, I think, when you try to voice it, but
Right.
voicing it in your own voice, it was funny. I mean, not funny. Your mouth was like, it was taking on this, and,
Yeah.
you know, it's hard to face that. And I love the inner state of my memory. You know, it's like that road doesn't go away.
Right.
Runs
Thank
through
you.
everything. So anyway, I'm just very impressed and glad I got to hear you.
Thank you, Holly. I appreciate that. I have I mean, theater was one of my early loves. So I think I often try to find a place for monologue and character and soliloquy in my poems.
Me too. I was a theater person. I totally get it.
Yeah. Reading Shakespeare again has brought that out of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, just briefly, we have another minute or so. Just tell them that what you have to do now is part of your PhD with Shakespeare.
Oh, it's just part of my coursework. I'm taking a Shakespeare class in part of my 2 years of coursework before I start working on the dissertation and my comps. But yeah, I had to compile an annotated bibliography recently about A Midsummer Night's Dream. I'm really interested in that that play was one of my early loves. I read it when I was 13, and it stayed with me since then. So I've gotten a couple poems out of Midsummer, and maybe it'll be a thread in the next manuscript.
Great. Well, James, thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure.
To read with us today. And obviously, you got to improve your Scrabble. That's your homework. Less annotated bibliographies or notes and more wordplay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of that in Shakespeare, fortunately. I guess I should plug my book again.
Yep.
So Club Q.
Yep.
You can find it on, Way Wiser is the press, so you can find it on their site. And then you can find it, on all the other places, Amazon, SPD Books, wherever fine books are sold. Or if you just go to your local bookstore and ask for Club Q by James Davis, then they'll.
That's a great prize. That's
I just ordered another
prize
copy.
Oh, so. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And just a plug for next week, Holly is going to be our reader next week. And Holly, I read on the back of your book, and obviously, I could donate 40 minutes of your 60 on this topic. Prayers about miniature golf?
Oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I was going to say,
That's
when I was
exciting.
right. We used to have a very competitive miniature golf family. Yeah, so I was sad.
The rich mind, that's for sure.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to dive deep into the miniature golf world next week. So
okay.
I'll be there.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
I'm so happy I got to hear you. Thank you all.
Yeah, no, thanks again.
Thank you.
And Kay and Donnell, thank you for being part of our program today. We're recording it, and we're gonna have that on our the Stockbridge Library website. You can be able to see that. And James, I'll send you a copy.
Super. Thank you so much, John. It was really wonderful.
No, that was great. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
Very good. We'll see everyone next week.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Take care. Yep.
Bye-bye.